Welcome, everybody, to the bi-weekly community call. A lot happened this week that's worth going over, so we'll kind of walk through all of it. A couple of one very big announcement and another big announcement, and a couple of partnership things got through the door. Let me go back to kind of where we last started, which was I will start with maybe the aftermath pool, and then we'll go into the branded LST stuff here in a second. So for those of you who've been keeping up on the partnership side, you might have seen the aftermath post, which is a large DEX on Sui, however you say it, SUI. And basically, they spun up this sort of 3 ETH pool, which features PX ETH, wrapped ETH from Wormhole, and NB ETH, which is the Sui's like natively bridged ETH. A little bit confusing on the names, but it's basically just an ETH pegged pool. And the cool thing about this particular DEX is, one, that it's the largest on that network, but two, it will kind of mark our expansion into that ecosystem, and having liquidity in an ecosystem is important, obviously, for the growth of PX ETH there. I think we are incentivizing it a little bit. Usually Funky would be up here to check me on this, but I believe we're doing a little bit of incentives. I don't know what the other incentives are off the top of my head, but it's worth checking out. But really the cool part of this whole integration is that PXETH got added as a gas token on the Sui network, which is an underappreciated feature of this particular integration. This is cool because it basically allows anybody coming over from mainnet to not need the native token of the network in order to interact with the pool or interact with the other applications on Sui. So something we would love to push a little bit more, especially with our branded LST strategy. But I think this is a good test bed for this type of integration. So the more we can kind of like see this stuff in the wild, the more we can be informed on it and try to guide our future integrations. But that's kind of boring in relation to the big announcement this week, which is the announcement of Orbeth, which is our launch of basically our new branded LST that we're building for the Arbitrum Orbit ecosystem. So if you're not familiar, Arbitrum is taking a similar approach to Optimism, in that they are trying to create quite a few different chains that are all connected to Arbitrum as a hub. So kind of like Optimism has all the super chains, Arbitrum wants to create a bunch of Orbit chains, and they do have a handful of these Orbit chains already live. There are some that are not live, but planning to build in the Orbit ecosystem. And so we've worked with them, and we've worked with a lot of these Orbit chains to come up with the best way to build a branded LST for all of them, because we could do individual branded LSTs for each Orbit chain, but we thought strategically it makes sense for all of them to rally behind one LST. This makes the marketing across the board more scalable. It makes the incentives more clear cut. It makes the brand more unified. And so the important thing with all of these Orbit chains is they want to operate under the unified sort of Orbit brand, similar to in the opposite or the Optimism ecosystem. And so over the past several weeks, we've been working on this, trying to get it out the door. It's a big announcement that we've been holding close to our chest as we get close to the finish line. But we finally got to announce it this week to a lot of fanfare, which was awesome. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, Sammy, if you want to kind of build out the strategy from here with Orbeth. And we lost him. He doesn't want to talk about it. Okay, all good. I will talk about it. And I don't know, maybe Derek can chime in, because I think, when we introduced Derek last community call, he's kind of like making sure all of these branded LSTs actually get launched and keeping the pipeline organized and clean and stuff. Sammy, are you back?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep, you're back. You want to talk about Orbeth?
Okay, there we go. Yeah. So basically what we found was that, when we told you guys we were doing the branded LSTs, the pipeline was a lot bigger than even what we were saying, just because there was a lot of chains that are that I wasn't calling like, real prospects like L1s and L2s that I think will be like big winners for us, because you can basically like spin up an L2, or they call them like L3s, I guess, on Arbitrum in like, you know, like 2 days or something, right? But almost half of those chains that are spinning up were super keen to work with us, and we just had a ton of these like mini wins like lined up, and Arbitrum eventually like got word that this is what we're doing, and we're partnering with basically every single orbit chain there was, and then that's when the conversation started with them, and now we have a scenario where we're partnering directly with the Arbitrum team to build out the native ETH staking solution of Arbitrum One and all the orbit chains around it. So now anyone can spin up an orbit chain. We're talking to orbit chains which are going to use this Orbith asset as a gas token on the network, use it to like bootstrap their points campaign, all of these different things. And like obviously like while the asset is like built by us and fully, collateralized by APX ETH, it's an Arbitrum native asset, similar to the way CB ETH is on Base, or, Meth is on Mantle. So it's like a huge win for us. There's a few big orbit chains that have made like very big promises to us that will not be using Orbith. That'll get announced like later in the year or sometime early next year. Just, if a chain that comes to us and it looks like, lots of good backers, and they look like they're going to get a ton of TVL in the door, then we're willing to make the odd exception if, they'll do things like, you know, make it a big part of their TVL campaign, own the whole marketing for it, and basically like just own the entire asset themselves, and we're just like white labeling it out to them. So there will be like the odd case where you'll see like an Arbitrum Orbit chain like pop up with its own branded LSD. But for Arbitrum and all the big winners that are there, so Ape Chain, who are some other big Orbit chains, Sanko, all of these, Zai, all of these different groups, like Orbit or Orbith will be the native staked ETH solution for all of those different L2s. So it's a huge win for us. And the reason it's not live yet is because we have to go through a rigorous and semi-egregious grant process where we have to like, coordinate all the different delegates, tell them what we're doing, get that all up to speed. And the announcement was the fuel we needed to get that done. You're going to start seeing with all the branded LSTs that we're not going to just be announcing them and then giving you timelines for when it's coming out, but rather more stuff like Flare, where it's like announced and launched on the same day. But something at the scale of like Arbitrum, it makes sense for us to announce it first so that we can work with the delegates and work on an ARB incentive program so that we don't have to spend Dinero tokens out of the treasury to make this a success. So yeah, was that what you were thinking, Colton?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover there. And so yeah, I would say look out over the next, I don't know, week or so, maybe a little bit more for just like the governance proposal that will be associated with Orbith and all of that stuff. Like Sammy mentioned, these bigger chains actually like, their governance processes are not fun. It's not as simple as like partnering with a smaller L2 or maybe a smaller L1 where we kind of have free reign to make an incentives agreement with them as part of the partnership conversations. So for bigger chains, it'll be a much slower roll just because we have to go through that type of thing. And the reality is like for these big ecosystems, getting incentives from their foundation is like a core bootstrapping mechanism for their whole ecosystem. And we want to be able to tap into that to really scale this to the biggest we can. Does Orbi take a cut to give to Arbitrum Treasury? I don't know what the status of that conversation is. I'm sure anytime we make a sort of like incentives proposal, that might be part of it or part of the conversation. But there are some that will for sure want a cut of the yield, which is totally fine. We designed the system that way. Is Arbitrum still doing the STIP grant program? I'm pretty sure they are. If not, they have a different program going on.
Yeah,
Is there an easy way?
it's some weird variation of the the big stip thing they did. After the stip, they did L tip, and then now there's a bunch of weird variations of that. So that's why we have to work directly with them to figure out which one is the best for us.
Yeah. Is there an easy way to see that yield structure in there? Oh, okay. I guess you're asking if a foundation or whatever, or a DAO takes a cut of the branded LST yield, will that be transparent and accessible? Yeah. We'll find ways to make that obvious, because communicating fees is important. So we always do it on our end, and if anything gets added to a branded LST, we'll make it part of that rollout as well. Cool. If there's any Orbeth questions, just feel free to ask them. But if not, I will keep going. So on the same day as the Orbeth announcement, actually, we announced the launch of Flare ETH, which is another L1 that we've launched on. Flare ETH is a smaller chain that's still kind of growing, but recently they've started leaning into their DeFi ecosystem a bit. And for them, bringing ETH yield on chain was something they really wanted. And so I saw somebody in Discord ask the other day, like, how long we'd been talking to Flare for, and I think we'd been talking to them for a decent amount of time, mostly because we needed to get the incentives aligned, we needed to get the marketing planned, we needed to get all of that stuff ready to go. But yeah, we had been talking to them for a bit, and it's cool to see it, finally come out. I think the incentives go live soon-ish. They have a weird kind of like incentive design, and not weird in that it's bad, weird in that it's just like unique to them, where they have these like much longer epochs. And damn it, this is why we need Funky here to explain how these incentives work. But basically, it's at the network level. They need to be able to like get it approved and then allocate the resources. And so we do have an incentives agreement with them. I think within the next week or so, you should see those go live, and then hopefully, like with the Sand ETH situation, that will kind of cause the TVL to start to grow. Right now, it's relatively small. I think one thing to consider with Flare too, though, is that it's not a sort of ETH native ecosystem. They're not like Polygon or anything like that, where they really lean into ETH. Oh, here we go. This is why we hired Derek. Look at this. We'll go live Sunday when the next R Flare epoch starts. There we go. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in farming on Flare. But anyways, back to what I was saying, it's not a sort of ETH native ecosystem. In fact, I think beginning of their life cycle, they leaned into a couple of other chains. And so ETH is like a relatively new asset for them. So it may take a little bit to kind of get momentum there. But I think once the users on the network start to realize that there's pretty good yield available to them, they might be pretty interested in that. I mean, we're also, Flare ETH is also integrated on the largest DEX on the network, which is the Spark DEX. And hopefully there will be, I don't know, Derek, do you know what all the incentives planned are by chance?
Do you mean like which tokens?
Yeah, which tokens?
Yeah, it'll be Dinero tokens and R Flare.
Okay. Does Spark have a points program or no?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Well,
they're pretty much just handling like the operational side of it. So that's where they step in.
Got it. Well, maybe one day they'll introduce some point token. Who knows? Yeah, they were big on the XRP community. Yeah, that's right. Maybe we should launch PX XRP. But yeah, that was the other big branded LST announcement. I think we have, and plus shout out to Layer Zero. One, they kind of power all of this, but two, they've been awesome at sort of showing us love on social media, as many of you noticed. We've gotten really close with them over the course of the branded LST development cycle, and it has been a pleasure. They're fans of us, we're fans of them, and so that's a really strong collaboration that we have. And so you can bet that like any chain that has a Layer Zero integration, we're going after it for a branded LST launch. Some of them will get out, some of them may not, but that's the plan. Anything else on branded LSTs that anybody up here wants to cover? Good. All right. If anybody has questions about branded LSTs, drop them in the chat. We can circle back to them. The other thing I wanted to give a reminder about is the Thruster and Hyperlock markets on Hidden Hand. So those went live about 2 weeks ago now. For those of you not familiar, Thruster's the largest DEX on Blast. Hyperlock is the sort of meta governance project built on top of Thruster. very similar to Balancer and Aura on mainnet. We are partnering in a big way with them, and that we are going to work on a couple of features that are native to those markets and will eventually get expanded out to other markets like points bribes and stuff. They have started bribing. So if you're a holder of either of those tokens or you're interested in holding either of those tokens, make sure to check out the hidden hand markets there. I think every week they have an epoch, if I'm not mistaken. So the rewards are going to be flowing pretty consistently. I think we put out a post a couple of days ago. The first epoch was a combined like 15,000 in incentives or something like that. We can only expect it to go up, but we expect it to go way up whenever we eventually launch the points bribe method, which we think will be like a huge win for hidden hand. But it also will allow us to expand to a lot of these like newer L2s and L1s and stuff that are still like early in their development life cycles and early in their token generation event life cycles. And so being able to do that gives us a lot of newfound flexibility with hidden hand. And that'll be a win for us, a win for everybody who uses hidden hand. And we're pretty excited about that particular mechanism. I wish Kupko was up here. Maybe he could explain how it's going to work, but maybe we can't leak that alpha. And I don't think he's here. So that's kind of the big update on hidden hand. As we mentioned on the last community call, hidden hand is still very much like a part of our business development strategy. We haven't abandoned it by any means. It's a good way to make connections with teams. It's a good way to build inroads into like various DeFi ecosystems. And it's also good for us whenever, maybe we expand PXE there, or we expand a branded LST to certain chains. Like we want to make sure that if it's relevant, hidden hand is there, and it's a tool for people to use to sort of bootstrap those products. So hidden hand's not going anywhere either. Trying to see. No questions this week, everybody. Don't worry, we'll make Derek spit out a joke. I think he has to go back to back. But yeah, we're kind of getting close to the half-hour mark, and so I ran through all of the partnerships and stuff. So there's some other things that we're down to talk about. Just feel free to ask. Sex and market maker strategy update. Yeah, so a couple of people in the Discord have been talking about, and again, let me caveat all of this, but there's only so much like that we can actually say, but I'll give as much information as we have. So a lot of people keep talking about the market maker funds that got sent back to us, and some people have been framing it as a bad thing, which makes no sense, and other people are just like confused. So what happened there is whenever you have a market maker agreement, you're not just like giving them tokens that they get to keep forever. They're usually on some sort of a loan and they have terms attached to it, etc. And we felt like we weren't getting the best deal possible with the market maker we were working with at the time. And so we decided to pull out of the agreement in order to pursue another market maker that we are planning to work with that gave us more favorable terms. And so these are like business to business type of transactions. And we obviously want to make deals that are the best for us and the community. So essentially, oh no, my mic is cutting out. Hold on. Can somebody take over? My stuff is freezing.
You're good. I can hear you fine. I'll take over while he's getting back into it. Hopefully not DWF Labs. No, not
All right,
DWF
am I back?
Labs.
Am I back?
You're back. Yeah.
All right, hell yeah. So, do you want me to keep going or you want to take over?
Yeah, go for it. I'll come in.
Okay. So anyways, what I was saying is we basically just found a better deal and are looking for better deals, and we want to make sure that we're getting like the most out of partnerships with AM or M market makers. Jesus, can't even talk now. I'm flustered from the FBI freezing my laptop. And so how does this all tie into the centralized exchange strategy? So basically, as you all know, like centralized exchange listings, or as we've shared with you guys, are pretty much just a pain in the ass. And they're really frustrating to work with. They make basically different deals with every single team that they talk to that includes us. as you all saw with the like scroll token launch, for example, they just took whatever a significant portion of the token supply in order to get a listing. And that's the type of stuff we're trying to be very careful about. And we don't want to get rated as a project by a centralized exchange. Like, we want to make sure that it's a fair deal on all sides. And so having a market maker work with us is kind of part of that type of thing, where we can go to centralized exchanges, tell them we have a market maker ready to go, and that will kind of like guarantee that the order books on the exchange get made. And that's part of like having a healthy centralized exchange listing. So we're in active conversations with all of them, and some of them have, I don't know, gotten further along than others. And so ultimately there's only so much we can do on the centralized exchange side. We can just like have those conversations, try to get them across the finish line, do everything we can to put ourselves in a position to succeed there. And that's pretty much it. There's no way we can like promise a listing or like promise a listing on a certain centralized exchange. Even if we could, we wouldn't be allowed to say who they are and when it's going to happen, for example. So yeah, there's only so much we can do on the SEC side, but rest assured we are trying our best and have been for a while. The market has just been super weird, and a lot of these centralized exchanges have just leaned into meme tokens and listing complete garbage on their exchanges. So hopefully they can turn a corner there. Anyway, Sammy, whatever else you had to say, feel free.
Yeah, no, the main update on our end is that like I think we're living and learning with like the centralized exchange process. We're taking like a bunch of different swings, whereas before we were kind of like going all out on one strategy. And I think through talking to others, doing the migration, talking with the exchanges, all these different things, we have a better sense of who we need to work with on this stuff and who we don't need to work with on this stuff. And that's why you might have seen things like, working with a different market maker, not doing any campaigns yet, all of these different things. It's really like a complicated and political process. But I think we're finally on the right path now.
Yeah, it's not a fun process, to be honest, but we'll save that for another day. I have a question. Will Orbith be minted? Will Orbith be minted via the Dinero website, or will Arbitrum have their own native official UI? So this is something that has come up a lot in these particular conversations. So for the branded LSTs, there are sometimes teams that have legal reasons that they can't host the UI. And some of it has to do with us like being a third-party builder. Some of it has to do with like the scope in which they're allowed to operate as a foundation, or whatever. They have legal reasons that we don't have much control over. And so what we've tried to do is work with them on making sure that branded LSTs are integrated into like their native bridge URL, for example. And so like if you go to the say native bridge, you'll see an option to either bridge your ETH over as Saiyan ETH or Super Saiyan ETH, for example. And so there might be some of that, but I think for a large handful, and especially for these like larger chains that we work with, we will probably have the UI hosted on the Dinero website, which honestly is good for brand awareness. It shows like who's powering the tech, which is nice. And we'll make sure that that website is accessible in all of the top resources for that ecosystem. So while it may not be like literally on the Arbitrum homepage, for example, it will be accessible to users wherever they go in terms of like whatever their resources are, whether it's like an ecosystem portal or whatever else. And the good thing about Orbith is that like we want it to get widely integrated, and it will be widely integrated. And so we'll have a bunch of people marketing the same product. And so honestly, more traffic to the Dinero website is never a bad thing. Let's see. Did you guys already mention the synonym settlement? No, we didn't. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit. Sammy, you're probably better suited to cover it though.
I actually am not sure if it's gone up for vote or yet. Not.
I think it did, but maybe we could just talk about the proposal in general. I'm not sure we covered it on the last community call.
Oh, did we not talk about? So basically, way back. I think if I look at the chat here, some of you guys have been around for it. We went through this like accelerator program called New Order that I was helping out with a bit, and some of the other team members were. And then as Redacted launched, they focused more on that. And then in that same window, I guess like the New Order project didn't really work out, and they transitioned to this protocol called Synonym. Going through that program, they had around like 4% of the supply, and the agreement was to never sell it, and then that got totally messed up when it transitioned to this new project. And that project's in a stage where it's like the founder's a good guy, and he was like willing to work with us, but to support their protocol, they started tapping into the tokens, like using them as incentives and distributing them and doing all of this stuff. And it's like, yeah, I mean, to be blunt, it's like fuck that, right? Like, we want to like, someone has like a position like that, and they're like going against our wishes and stuff. It's like, we're gonna buy them out, right? So around like half of their tokens were still vested, half of them were liquid, and they needed the cash, and like we weren't gonna let them sell the tokens, so we put up a proposal to buy back all of those tokens at 15 cents on the dollar, which is around 4% of supply. And paired that with like the open market buyback we did. And we're rolling out a bunch of different strategies for buybacks, whether it's like active sellers or open market stuff or the centralized exchange stuff with the new market makers we're working with. There's a bunch of different things we're trying, and I think like this will be like a really good move in the right direction, because this is like a lot of supply. If this was to happen 19 more times, it would be the entire supply. So yeah.
That's a funny way to put it, I guess. But yeah, so this is one of those things again where we're just kind of like shoring up the cap table, taking back tokens from maybe people that like, or teams or whatever that shouldn't be holding them, kind of like we did with the Olympus thing. Those tokens are much token overhang or something like this. So pretty good move to buy them back and just shore up the treasury, shore up the cap table, and make sure that there's not going to be like third parties that are no longer really affiliated with us in any way to start dumping tokens on the market. That would just be terrible. Makes no sense. Cool. Yeah, and so ViceBeck
Yeah, I
said
think
it
the idea.
got
I
put on
think
the
the idea here before, like a lot of them may just like roll out like IPX, and now you guys are seeing like the scale of the partnerships and why we were so excited about branded LSTs, and then after that, I imagine like the centralized exchanges, right? I think it's like a thing where it's like concentrate the stakeholders to like the people who believe in us and want to see the product and are not sellers, and then really push on distribution of the token as we start to get these things out the door. So that's like the general strategy here from like a 30,000 feet.
Yeah. So, with that said, we are a little bit past the half hour and we covered most of the important stuff. So, we can give everybody some time back this Friday. But before we do that, one, I'll open up to any last questions before we close it out. And then two, we'll make Derek tell a joke before he leaves. He has to one more joke, I think, to try to redeem himself. I'm not optimistic about it, but maybe we'll see how it goes. So if anybody has any last second questions, let's do it. Wait, is Funky here now? Funky, are you listening? Are you still on the spaces? Are you double dipping? Oh my god. Yeah, he's cooking right now. Can we do a Dow vote for you to buy me a burger? No, we haven't even gotten to eat burgers. We're all living off of ramen in a Pyrex glass. Is there any timeline on when Orb ETH starts being usable that you want to share? And no, we don't share timelines around here. Partner. That's against the law here. But yeah, the tech is all ready. It's a matter of getting all the other stuff aligned. Incentives, DeFi integrations, all the rest. Yeah, maybe Funky is an AI. Well, if there's no more questions then, everybody get your crickets and tomatoes ready, and we will let Derek try to redeem himself. No pressure. Take it away, friend.
All right. I don't know how many people will get this. I know our team will get this, but no matter how much Dinero goes up, What is something that Terrence will never buy?
What?
A new mic.
All right. Should we fire him? Should we fire him? Thoughts?
I didn't hear it. What did he say?
Yeah, what do you say?
Oh, they didn't hear it. You have to run it back.
Running it back. I said, no matter how much Dinero goes up, what is something Terrence will never buy?
And what is it?
A new mic.
That's fucking weird.
Dude.
How many tickets? Give him some.
That's actually pretty
Big tomatoes.
Listen to him.
I
You
think
can't
it's-
even hear him talk now.
Yeah, that's the funniest part.
Yeah, Terrence, you just actually made it funny, bro. You saved the joke.
This is worse than the Chang joke.
He can't even defend himself.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
V-Specs is the best. V-Specs dropped a tomato before Derek even started.
You just pegged him with it. Joker Frog says, "Well done. You get 1 thumbs up." But yeah, that was terrible. All right, we'll never.
Gangster said to make him CEO.
Jeez.
Yeah, before you guys, we have to get Terrence a new mic.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy.
For you to get Figgy and Mike as well. It's been a long time coming.
No, Figgy's just been banned.
Wow.
We know that he's never getting a new mic.
Never says it's the best one so far. So Terrence basically just saved the joke by hopping on here and talking in that fucking tin can that he calls a mic. Win merch though? All right. Actually, yes. First off, I'm sorry about the merch. I'm late on the merch. I have a couple of designs, but it hasn't been a focus. We've been working on a bunch of shit. So I will get the merch soon. And I keep saying that, but it will happen soon. Yeah, merch then Moon, potentially. Refocus.
Terrence is
Yeah.
on the stage. Terrence is on the stage. He's just muted, he's just taking these strays.
Now I'm scared. Oh, now I'm scared to open my mouth.
I can't hear anything this guy's saying.
Yeah.
You can't say it.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Okay, well, whatever. We'll wrap this thing up.
It's terrible.
Terrence, thanks for shaving Derek's joke. That's insane that you came and like alley-ooped it for him. Can't believe it. But anyway, everybody, thanks for hanging out. Have a good weekend, and we will see you all in a couple weeks. Peace.
Peace.